Welcome back to the second hour of Altered Egos. Thank you very much for staying in with us. And I have on the line Nicole Lebrasseur from www.i-accuse. Good afternoon, Nicole.
Hey, good afternoon. Now you're going to have to get used to saying from myfreedom2017.com.
So that's the preferred handle, is it?
That's the preferred handle, yes, because that's what's going to get Canadian citizens as the official shareholders in Canada.
Excellent. Okay, so before we get into that project you're involved with about reconstructing our whole electoral system and getting rid of parties, essentially, I'd like your opinion on Trudeau's announcement that he is not going to go after electoral reform.
Well, actually, I was elated because what they're trying to push in government, they are totally keeping direct democracy or any other types, really, of reform that would allow Canadian citizens to have a real voice out of the picture on purpose. And, you know, so when that happened, well, I mean, I kind of knew, but I didn't know to what extent they would push proportional representation, because proportional representation only means the same thing. If people understood exactly how government is set up and how the government dictates over the people, it is not a democracy. And because they say that we are the shareholders and they represent us, the people, on election day, well, that makes us the legal shareholders, stakeholders, stockholders of everything Canada, including with the First Nations.
So why do you think the political leaders of parties are never going to put direct democracy on any kind of ballot? Yeah, even though they're opposed to a referendum just right out of the gate, let alone a referendum that would compel them to not only dissolve their party structure, but also to start to learn how to debate honorably in the House of Commons. Like, at what point are we going to be able to bring them on board with this to make these changes?
I don't think we'll ever bring the political parties on board. They are set up in a certain way to be able to always maintain. We've had 150 years of different political parties. Every year after year for 150 years, we've been going through the same revolving cycle. And it's like we're inside of this wheel and people keep running and trying to catch up, but they never get anywhere because we're not moving. And it's a fallacy to believe that in Canada that you are free. You are not free. Within this system, what happened is when Canada actually, even in 1867, we were considered free. And then in 1931, then, you know, we walked to, that's when the Statute of Westminster came in. And this is where the provinces, and, you know, this was a coup d'etat that the countries did to separate themselves from Britain, in a sense. And, you know, I think they were ready to blow the lid on everything, especially with, Mackenzie King and them. So what happened between the 1919 was when it first started with the Balfour Report, and then it escalated to 1926, and then it took them another 5 years to finalize and to agree to the Statute of Westminster. And what happened there is that all we did is we exchanged one dictatorship for another. So it was a coup d'etat for a dictatorship in Canada. And the reason I say that is because the Canadian citizens, even though the United Nations, through the decolonization of all the countries over the years, they say Canada and the United States were decolonized. So if the First Nations try to go for decolonization, they will be denied, and they are denied. So there's no recourse at the international level, even for us as the colonies, because they say, oh, well, you've already been decolonized. Well, that's because in 1867 they adopted the political party system, which kind of, because in the UK, it kind of gave the people a sense of being free, which is a total crock of, I'm going to be ladylike today. I'm sorry, but...
Oh, you don't have to apologize.
I'm going to try to be nice.
Okay, let me jump in here, firstly. Because, firstly, John A. Macdonald was our first prime minister after Confederation.
That's right.
A rather nasty, racist, alcoholic personality. And
Freemason.
yes, okay. And what he did, because it was a brand new game they were playing, he actually appointed the opposition for the first round of Parliament. It was only a couple, 3 or 4 or 5 years later, that opposition parties actually officially formed. That's one thing to note, that's where that whole party structure started, just by this one person making declarations and the other MPs saying, all right, that seems to work, let's do it. But my mistake, and you've corrected me several times, and several people on Facebook are helping me understand these things too. Shortly after the death of Elizabeth I, I think that's 1603, around 1608, the monarchy in England pretty well lost all its power for taxation and for controlling the legal system, right?
Yeah, and not very many people know this, and that's why, like, they don't teach this in school.
So, do we have, instead of a monarchy, we have a monarch that has a corporatocracy under her?
Right. And, the thing is if you're looking back through the years, I'm going to read you something, okay? And this is where the Crown is actually the government of Canada. But it says that they named the Queen in there because she embodies Canadian citizens, everything, all the Crown corporations, and what actually she embodies all of Canada and what it is, more like as well as a culture. So it's only a fictitious name that they use. Why would they keep this secret for 150 years? Most people, I'm telling you, I could go on the street right now and even go through the parliamentarians and ask them, what does the Queen actually do in Canada? And they probably have a hard time stating the facts the way they actually are. And you can find that on the government website, and especially in the military website. Now, we covered that last time, but there's something I want to mention here in regards to what happened back earlier on. Okay, so in here it says the Kaiser Hotel concerning a situation of which during the First World War, the Army Council commandeered a hotel as a location for the Royal Flying Corps headquarters. The authority for seizing the hotel was based in a statute and in the Crown prerogative to take property in times of danger for defense of the realm. The court accepted this legal basis, and had that been the end of the matter, no compensation would be legally payable. However, in this case, the court found that the Defense Act of 1842, which provided for compensation in the event of property seizures, applied to the Crown. The statute acted to abridge the existing Crown prerogative and extend it to include legally payable compensation. The Supreme Court of Canada was divided on a similar issue in the Ross River case. The Crown prerogative at issue was the power to create a reserve for Aboriginal peoples. The majority held that this power was limited by the Indian Act and the Territorial Lands Act, Section 38. Well, here you have to go to 38 to see where they got it from. The minority judgment of 3 dissented at this point adopted the position that the Crown prerogative power was not constrained by either statute. Vancouver Island Peace Society versus Canada. The applicant sought to squash 2 orders in council approving visits of nuclear-powered and nuclear-armed vessels to Canadian port. One argument presented by the applicants was that certain statutes had the effect of displacing the Crown prerogative used by the government as a basis to the orders. The court rejected this argument and held that the relevant Crown prerogative remained whole. That conclusion was based on a finding that the purpose of the statutes does not include the regulation of the actions at issue, nor did Parliament intend to do so. Nothing in the provisions of the statute and nothing of the historic conditions of mischief they were enacted to deal with persuaded the court that Parliament intended to withdraw or to feather the prerogative of the Crown to provide for the visit. of the ships at issue to Canadian ports. While a statute might limit Crown prerogative, it might also, in certain very limited circumstances, act to displace such a prerogative wholly. And then it goes to down the contents of the Crown prerogative. So, and this is where you see the division between the provinces and the federal government. Okay? The Crown prerogative really that they're talking about here is the federal government. Now, here it says, so far this paper has discussed the concept of the Crown prerogative and the process by which its content has been and is developed. It is appropriate at this stage to survey modern law on the subject with an objective to define the contents of the Crown prerogative by subject area. The common law has determined the contents of the Crown prerogative. It is now possible to propose a current, non-exhaustive contents list. 1. Foreign affairs. 2. War and peace. 3. Treaty making. 4. Other acts of state in matters of foreign affairs. And 5. Defense and the armed forces. Other powers and privileges considered Crown prerogatives include those respecting passports, power of mercy, diplomatic appointments, public inquiries, hiring and dismissal of public servants, administration, and disposal of public lands, copyright, armorial bearings, and honors and titles. It should be noted that the above list does not include reference to the prerogative-styled personal prerogatives of the Governor-General. The personal prerogatives relate to matters such as the appointment or dismissal of the Prime Minister or the dissolution of Parliament. These powers are theoretically exercised upon the Governor-General's own discretion, but in practice follow directly from election results, parliamentary votes, or as directed by the Prime Minister. So, what are they saying here? He can dismiss the Prime Minister if the Prime Minister asks for his own dismissal.
I know, like that's the cat chasing his tail here.
Exactly.
And so, that's what Harper did essentially when he prorogued Parliament 2 or 3 times.
Right, but the Governor-General can't do it on his own.
Well, we're left. You see, that was the structure initially, and now we've drifted away from that and not replaced any way to get a handle on an aberrant prime minister who needs to
they have replaced it, but you know what? How we would be able to find that needle in the haystack is go through every Supreme Court judgment and federal court judgment and all of these trials, because we have in Canada a written and an unwritten part of the Constitution, and this is where they do the bait and switch tactics and confuse Canadians by changing the documents as they please. Any government can come in there every 4 years and just change everything. It's like the United States. One day you can have an abortion, the next day you can't.
Okay, let's deal with something that's really pressing. Now, all of this is pressing, frankly, and not just depressing, but very, very urgent stuff. I think the national, I'm not sure his title, he's an MP under Trudeau, involved with economics, national economics, whatnot. I'm not sure. He made a statement in front of some business people back east that the Army would be used to help the Kinder Morgan pipeline project get pushed through. And now we know that the Queen's prerogative is in defense issues. They may try to stretch that to say it's a national interest, but the kicker is, the flip side is, they have a responsibility with First Nations as well. So you've got the same people bringing the Army in to ram a pipeline through First Nations territory are responsible for protecting the rights of First Nations.
Right, but what people forget, and what I didn't know before either, is that in order to have fiduciary duty to begin with, when you go to court, and because it's under public law, there really doesn't exist for Canadian citizens, unless it's to consider the Canadian citizens as a whole. Now, in order to force their hands, we have to come together. At least 70% is what they wrote into their laws. Okay? So in order for, but if you have, let's say, 10,000 people or 10 million people, it will not be enough to cover that 70% margin, and then they will keep veto power over you. And this is why we've created My Freedom 2017, because that will allow the Canadian citizens and First Nations on the other side of our dealings to get organized. And what I mean by that is that while we're doing everything else, people should go on to My Freedom 2017, download our free app, look at the Citizens Convention of Consent, because you need a signature, not a petition. We need a binding contract. Everything in Canada is contract law. Everything is corporate law. Everything they do under the Crown Corporation is corporate law. Everybody tends to run to them under the Charter of Freedom. That's the wrong thing to do.
Okay.
Because then you can only represent yourself and not people as a whole.
Okay, so that's the picture is starting to emerge. We have these two tracks of authority. And when you talk about 70%, you're talking about the charter and the laws that the standing politicians essentially put in the charter.
That's actually for any constitutional changes.
Right. But what you're saying, the real effect that will take place is if we have 51% of Canadians signing the Declaration of Consent, right?
Absolutely.
Because
that would be through corporate law.
Yes, because in corporate situations, that's all you need. You don't have some artificial hurdle put out there by the government. You just have corporate law, and 51 is just fine.
Exactly. And the thing is people have to realize that the power is in the province. Everybody has to go community to community and, enforce these things. Right now we have 8 Liberals in the provinces. So this is why, Trudeau seems to be the leader, but really it's the 8 provinces that are the leaders. They hold all the power within the lands and most of the decision making. Because, if he wants to, bring in carbon taxes, well, the provinces don't have to say yes. They can say no. It's up to the province to decide. And this is how people can see we've been brainwashed into this federalism, idealism that everything has to go through federal. Everything has to go through federal only on certain issues. But everything really remains at the provincial level. It's like the provinces signed a treaty between, the 10 provinces and 3 territories. So it's a treaty between them. So you need to look at the federal government as an organization that is taking care of the treaty between the provinces and the territories in Canada.
Like in right of statement again, right?
That's right.
Okay, now
so
just before we go too far here now, the provinces have a prerogative as well. They have authority of their own, and some of that prerogative overlaps with the feds. Yeah.
And sometimes well, see, and it's because of the 1931. The provinces didn't sign on to, for the federal government to run.
To run the country.
Exactly.
So the federal government, i.e. the Crown, is kind of doing what the Queen or the monarch, let's say, did before we had a constitution.
Yeah. It's one dictatorship. They only took over a dictatorship agenda. And this is where the political party system is. Would you believe I got kicked out of a Facebook group, event page that is trying to organize, protests right across the nation, right across Canada. And I posted, that, instead of let's make sure that, the cops can no longer affect protests. And by doing this, if everybody signed the Citizens Convention of Consent, it's a safer thing to do. But at the same time, they have to be careful what they wish for, because if they're marching down on Ottawa, and this is where you got to think, problem, reaction, solution. He says, no, we're not doing it, pisses everybody off. Now, all of the political parties get together, and then they entice the people to go running down to Parliament and be all mad, And it's a beautiful strategy. We're going to pretend we're going to give this to you, and then we're going to say no, and then the people are going to get pissed off, and then, we're going to make all these protests, and then we're going to say we're going to stick you with proportional representation, which still keeps you a slave. It still steals your proxy right to direct democracy and having real title to your Crown Corporation assets.
Nice.
Okay, so they need to make sure that you never get this idea. So are the political parties going to say, hey, we got a great idea, let's go direct democracy?
No, that's not going to happen.
No, because they've been planted in there for a reason. Most people are oblivious to that. But once you've researched year after year since the inception of Canada, or even the United States or any other country, under the Commonwealth of Nations, it's the same cancerous disease. They steal your proxies by calling it democracy, in a false democracy of you voting for somebody who will increase your taxes. You are voting for your own dictator of the year, a new flavor for the next 4 years. The people go and vote. Yay, we got a savior. They go vote. The next day, they start bitching at them. I mean, we've seen this over and over and over, and people need to get off the wheel. And we've given them everything humanly possible from my end and the people we work with to come up with a strategy that will work, that will stand up in court, but we need them to wake up and to sign this agreement. Otherwise, we have no legal standing.
Okay, so I had a really close look. Was there something else you wanted to add to that?
Well, actually, there is something. The people need to go and read corporate governance in Crown Corporations and other public enterprises guidelines. And then it'll show you who is directing all of our Crown corporations. And there's an item here. It says, the shareholder is the key stakeholder for the corporation. The corporation should identify its other major stakeholders and how information should be communicated to this broader audience. The corporation should have a communications policy in place. Board should be assured that the corporation system supporting the communications policy will anticipate those issues likely to attract interest and, when appropriate, inform the shareholder in a timely manner. Communication should reflect a sensitivity to the complex of accountabilities facing the shareholder. Now, here's the key. With the government as sole shareholder, boards need to pay particular attention to the fishbowl environment in which the shareholder operates. In addition to the regular periodic reports, the corporation, usually through the CEO or the chair, should inform the shareholder, the government, not the Queen and Right of Canada or the Queen and Right of provinces.
Yeah, I'm with you.
The government.
Gotcha.
In addition, it should inform the shareholder of any significant developments and decisions likely to have major impact on the corporation or on public perceptions and attitude towards it. Any significant direct communication between management and the shareholder should be brought to the board's attention. Now, here, who are they identifying as the sole shareholder? The government. In all of the documentation and in people's minds across Canada, what did they use at the Supreme Court? The Queen and Right of Canada. Yeah. The Queen and Right of Canada is listed as the shareholder on all Crown documentation. Hydro One, she just sold off. Okay, that's what it makes it look like. But actually, it's Kathleen Wynne and the Minister of Environment and all of these people who were actually the shareholders.
Well, they represent us. They're kind of CEOs.
Exactly, and this is why it's imperative that people sign the Citizens Convention of Consent so that we can change the terminology in the text, because we were freed in 1931, again freed in 1982, and we were freed before 1867. So it's time for the people to take responsibility, sign this document, and have us listed, the people, as the official shareholders in Canada, instead of these bogus dictatorial dictatorship agendas and governance that they have in place, while they manipulate the people to still keep them in power through bogus proportional representation.
Well, it's the party thing, whether you're first past the post or proportional rep. If it's a party as the representation, and they have their own corporate mandate, right? Their mandate is not, for example, to make sure that Nicole and Bob have good health care and blah blah blah. Their mandate, primarily, first and foremost, is to attain power.
Exactly.
And if that's their mandate, then how you attain it doesn't really matter. The mandate is to get it and keep it. And so,
exactly. Imagine, Bob, for one sec, imagine what would happen to the world if Canadians actually took their own responsibilities, stopped waiting for a savior to head a political party that is already pre-chosen anyway, no matter what. I mean, I will argue this till the day I die. And that's how sure I am of it. Anybody who goes into politics has no more power once they're in there. So everything that they have said during their, wanting to become a politician and how they're going to sway the people or whatever party they follow or they represent, they're going to turn out to be liars. And we got to stop the lying. And that's because people need to take their responsibility, become the true shareholders, because now through corporate agendas, they are stealing our natural resources, everything that is dear to us. They're trying to blind us with, we're going to give you $1,300 a month. And then after a while, they say, well, I'm sorry, we had to sell all of your public assets to give you $1,300 a month. And then now we got to tax everybody even higher, but we have nothing left because all the corporations own our assets. So there's no more Canada.
wow,
This is what they're doing worldwide, and it happened in Greece.
Gotcha. Yeah, Greece was, I have to stop and say Greece was the case because it's the home of democracy in the world's eye, right? So they wanted to take that out symbolically.
Well, the thing is they had a group representing themselves under direct democracy, which was a total bullshit scenario. I mean, I could just spit every time I think about it. But at the same time, it allowed us to be able to see the reality of what's happening. So this happened for a reason, and bless these people in Greece because, they've put up with a lot. And now they've lost their country to corporate debt. And it used to be that if a corporation got themselves into debt or lent out money or did whatever, and they made bad judgments, tough luck. That corporation needs to declare bankruptcy, not the country. It's buyer beware. And now they flipped it where corporations could actually own countries.
Yes, and we bailed out these egregious bankers to a huge tune, and we still suffer from their targeting of the global national economies with fraudulent housing mortgages launched into that economic system. So after doing that, they then have the audacity to say that they're going to put us on an austerity program, which is really an impoverishment program.
Well, yeah, we are not free in Canada. We are only free to decide which next dictator will replace the previous one. And they call that democracy. That should be ashamed. But, we given all this, we have a solution, and that's the beauty of what Canada can do and pull off, because with the My Freedom 2017, people can download our free app, sign online, or sign right on their phones. You don't need to go out. You don't need to do anything other than that, and start learning about how you make decisions for yourself. People will have to learn how to have an actual voice, and as well as starting to listen, because the problem in Canada is that everybody wants to be heard, but nobody wants to listen to anybody else. Now, I've seen people say, we want peace, yet they have to argue with everyone over and over and over again. They cannot shut up for 2 minutes and listen. And this is the kind of children we've grown into from our education system, and we have to look at ourselves inside and out, and as deep as we can before we can even entertain the thought that we can help, run our communities. And because if you take care of your pennies, your dollars will take care of themselves. So if we take care of our communities, the country will take care of itself, basically. As long as we are knowledgeable, we start educating ourselves and stop thinking that we know it all when actually we know frig all. Because according to what this government says and does, people need to stop listening to their words and look at their actions.
Tell me about that. I mean, I just can't. Okay, let's go back to
How many times are we going to keep making the same mistake? We've got 150 years of sheer craziness in this country.
Well, what's happening now is that Trudeau is going to make himself so unpopular that the next election gives the Conservatives an opportunity, and we've got, O'Leary and Leach, who are just like Trump
Well,
down
yeah,
below.
but it's pre-planned. They want us to hate our government. And then, have you ever watched the series Jericho
No.
on Netflix? Everybody's got to watch this because they want us to uprise. They want us to destroy, they want us in a civil war. Syria happened because it was intentional. Instead of all of our monies, everything going to help the Syrian people build their countries and protect it, no, they took everybody out of there because they want the land. And then they want to cause a refugee problem worldwide where it's going to cause civil unrest in every major country there is for their global governance agenda, all under the United Nations. People need to look at the United Nations a lot closer, and they'll see that all of the TPP, all these trade deals, everything that's causing us misery in our countries that people are protesting is coming from the steering committees at the United Nations creating these business deals.
This takes us back to Maurice Strong and that crowd back 40 years ago.
Well, everybody, the United Nations was created for world domination.
Right.
And if anybody believes that the United States is walking away from it, they created it, they own it. Whoever controls the United States owns the United Nations, and that'll never happen. That's all talk. It's all politics. You don't give 4 other countries, the United States has, and 4 other countries have veto. You've got France, England, China, and Russia, along with the United States, all with veto power. Those 4 countries can turn around, or 3 countries can turn around and veto the United States, go after it, whenever they felt possible since the 1940s. Now, how much sense does that make to you when you got Russia and China as listed as our worst enemies?
Well, by some people.
North America.
Yeah.
It makes no sense unless you already control those countries, and the heads of, the presidents of all these countries or prime ministers are already their puppets.
Okay, so the UN is a whole different kettle of fish, and yet it's definitely the kettle of fish. Let's go back to something you said a few moments ago about the areas that the Crown's prerogative has jurisdiction in, because we agreed that the provinces and the federal government overlap in prerogatives. Are you able?
Exactly.
When you look through those 4 or 5 items, national security, blah blah, can you pinpoint which parts the province shares in with a prerogative?
What the province shares in is taxation. Okay, and the province got to benefit through the federal system because instead of the province taxing everybody and not having the military support, what they do is they tax us twice, federally and provincially. And then that gives them enough money to be able to do what they want with their military. So what the province benefits is the protection of the military and the RCMP. And then they still have their OPPs within that. It's just a double, or triple layer of security.
Authority.
Yeah, and authority, yeah.
So what's the next step then? I went to the site, I looked at signing up, and I was a little bit distracted by the host, I think it is, software of that particular petition. It goes on about it being, it's a legal document and ramifications, blah, blah, blah. And I had to stop and think about what I was signing for that. But as the days went by, I realized, well, of course, that's exactly what it has to be to have any force of effect.
Exactly, because it's corporate law, right?
Yes, exactly.
So we had to fix that document. If I would have done that document and just between citizens, without any legal connotation to it, corporate connotation to it, it would not stand.
Gotcha.
It would fall under common law.
Right.
And if you look at a court case, parents were opposed at their daughter being immunized, and they went to court under common law. The same day they lost their court case, the child was forcibly immunized against the parents' wishes. And but you had a group of nurses here in Ontario who were refusing to immunize themselves in their hospital area. So they took it to court, and they won under corporate law.
Oh, I didn't realize they won.
Oh, they won.
But they went under corporate law. That part wigs me out just a tad there. Like, how does that work for...
Corporate law is totally different. Corporate law is a little bit more stiff. It's not as ambiguous in the text because, you know, they are all business guys and they want to make sure nobody screws them over. But when it comes to public law and all this, their laws and even the charter are so ambiguous. And in the charter it says that the government could... You only get the rights bestowed upon you that the government will decide to give you. Okay? So you could be thinking that... And if you don't know how to read the statutes, you're going to, you know, or the acts, you're just going to lose yourself in there. So when you go to court and, you know, you say, okay, well, this is my human right. Well, first of all, they're going to try and throw you in there under the charter because then you have no rights. Once you know what we know, you see that you have no rights under that charter. It's totally bogus, and the government can decide the day you're in court that, oh, no, you don't have that right. We signed the documents this morning.
So the nurses in Ontario or Quebec, I think it's Ontario, who took them to court. How did they incorporate themselves to be called?
They're union.
Gotcha.
They're unionized.
So they worked under the union as being a corporation.
That's right. So basically what we've done is a binding legal agreement under a corporation, which is a Santé Research. These people are so now the citizens become my clients in a sense, and I work for for them in bringing this to the court. So okay, I've got so many, but because I'm a market researcher, and you know our trade is research, we are bound by confidentiality agreements. So the courts cannot enforce us to divulge our list, and that's why I did it like that. Everything was made to protect the people as best as we could, and that's why we don't even ask for their ID. At some point, it's going to be up to the person to decide if they want to give the idea. This document, the Citizens Convention of Consent, is only a stepping stone to be able to show proof that together as a people, this is what we want. Because otherwise, there are no laws for us to be able to do this other than this way, and the government is not going to allow us to do this because they will lose their power, and whoever controls them is not going to want to allow us this. So when you say that the prime ministers and the premiers are the ones who decide if we get a referendum, and then they'll, you know, they want to have all the power over drafting the questions, and then they'll use, I mean, the referendums we've had in Canada are not referendums, they were plebiscites. And then, plebiscites or plebiscites? Plebiscites. I always get those two words, or I don't even know if one's actually a word, but anyways, you get the picture.
Yep.
Where, you know, this is, the government still remains veto power over whatever referendums we want, so they are actually false referendums.
Gotcha.
They are not true.
Right, so when you have 51% signing the Citizens Convention of Consent, you've got that in your midst. Where do you file the court action?
Then we file the court action under the Corporations Act for the Crown Corporation of Canada and all corporations, where we are the actual, because they've said, right, the Canadian people through the elections actually own this country. So, but the one that is the sole shareholder is the government that represents the people. So basically, we are the shareholders, but right now we're in minority position because we have no voice other than through a political party system. So now, at that point, within corporate law, the judges who say that they have no right to interfere, this is not, you know...
this is a private matter.
Yeah, they're saying it's not justifiable. Well, it is under corporate law.
Gotcha. Okay.
It is very justifiable, and because there is a clause for minority shareholders.
Yes, because that happens all the time, doesn't it, in corporate law?
So we'd have two stances, as minority because we have no voice, and as the official ones. But we have to get together to make us official, otherwise they will never give it to us, because then they lose control.
Yeah, big time.
And it's not about overriding the government, it's about us, the people, having final decision-making authority as to what happens with our military, as to what happens with our money. You know, I mean, all of these political party leaders have pledged basically allegiance to not just the Queen, that is bogus out there, and which the documents that we all have proves without a shadow of a doubt. But they also have to, just like the United States, and every president and every person in governments worldwide have to pledge allegiance at 100% support for Israel. Now, that's another story altogether. But why are they all repeating the same little paragraph, word for word? Justin Trudeau, the NDP, all of these people. And this is why I know that they are not in control of their own political parties. They are being dictated to by something else. And the only way that we're going to prove anything or going to be able to move on is to represent ourselves. Stop hoping for some fictitious savior when it's our job. And everything's laid out for them. It's very easy. And the government is there to make you think it's hard, but it's not. It's a signature, and it's standing behind your signature.
Do you have the Declaration of Consent in front of you?
No.
I should have asked that before we started. I don't know if I've got a copy.
We should have also. We were all supposed to go on for 20 minutes.
I know, but you're so interesting, and I won't say entertaining. You're definitely interesting, and I've got the time. And after what Trudeau has pulled off with his Liberals, this issue has got to be on the table.
Well, look at for the First Nations and AFN. That bogus memorandum of understanding says in the fine print, section 21, this is a non-binding agreement. But when they're taking pictures and they're sending this around the world, they are sending off the message that the Canadian government in Indian Affairs has just struck a deal with First Nations across Canada, and that AFN represents the First Nations when they do not.
Well, that's to help corporations feel confident of making investments in this territory.
Like, if we start to look at their paperwork, how many documents actually have dates and signatures?
Yikes, that's bad.
That's one of them that doesn't even have a date.
Wow. Okay.
So people can go and read, if they go to myfreedom2017.com and go to the Citizens Convention of Consent, they can read it in French and English. And they can also read it on the app. And the app is free.
And
everything's free.
That's at Google Play for the app?
Google Play and iTunes. And they just have to look for My Freedom 2017 and download it.
So what's your next move here? I guess you've got most of the tools on the table for people to pick up and build a new democracy. I guess the big thing now is to spread the word.
Well, yeah, spreading the word. And what we did was pretty amazing because we got connected to, mind you, this would cost an arm and a leg, but we finally got connected to mainstream media where we can release, we can do press releases unlimited. Excuse me. Oh, boy. I'm talking too much.
It's good stuff.
So anyways, these unlimited press releases can go to 10,000 places worldwide.
Nice. All right.
So right now, though, I'm going to be focusing on BC because for the simple reason you guys are going into an election. And if right now it's kind of fast to, get people to understand what is actually happening, educating them at the same time as to what they need to know, and to stop believing the fictitious lies that these politicians are saying. And first of all, most of these politicians don't even know the truth themselves. So we got to start filtering here. And even if there's direct democracy parties out there, they need to be able to promise the people that the minute they win, it belongs to the people and not do like Greece did. Because any direct democracy groups out there that are going to try to, sway the people to go with them may have a gun to their heads once elections are done.
Oh, I'd expect
just like with what Greece did.
I'd expect. Well, Greece had a slightly different thing where they had borrowed money off the books from, that banking outfit in the States. What's their name?
The Federal Reserve.
No, it's a private bank, one single private bank that has such a bad rep. Damn, I can't remember its name. Everybody knows the name. It's not coming to me.
Chase Manhattan?
No, it's a more egregious group than that even. But they,
SBC.
no, gosh. Anyway, they made these loans to the then sitting government of Greece that were off the books, and that kept Greece in the European Union because they still had good numbers until finally it got exposed that they had these other debts hanging over them, and that's when the pressure was allowed to be put on. Now, to say that that group that loaned that money to Greece in the first place were not part of the European Union's plan to bankrupt Greece anyway, you can't make that statement. But the same sort of stuff will happen in Canada, even more so, because we have so many assets in this country that corporations are after.
They sold all of our gold.
The bullion.
Yeah, and the thing is, we can't sue them. The only ones who can sue, the government is the only one that can sue the heads of crown corporations who are doing mischief or whatever. But we can't, as Canadian citizens, we cannot turn around and sue them for, mismanagement.
For selling off all our gold is what you're saying.
Exactly.
So we have nothing to back our currency if we so desire.
Exactly. So by removing final decision-making authority, at least on the major issues, we're not trying to overthrow the government here. By all means, there's a lot of good people that work there. But at the same time, the people, when the politicians are away, the government does not fall apart. Our governance does not fall apart. So people have to start associating the fact that the ones who are running this country will still be there. They'll still have their jobs. And the politicians will no longer be able to make final decisions other than come to us and ask us for our real opinion, not just process a 100-person survey and say that, this is what Canadians want, bullshit that they keep pouring at us.
Yes, I know that. I've got to let you go. This is awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
But anyways, positive note, everybody.
Yes.
There's a lot of hope.
Thank you very much. This is awesome. Good, timely work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend. Bye for now.
You too. Bye-bye.
So that's Nicole Lebrasseur of www.i-accused.com, and more importantly, at myfreedom2017.com. We're going to go out with a tune again from,